What comes to mind for you when I say practicing self-love? For me, it was a bit of confusion. For one, I felt like, of course, I would love myself. That comes with the territory, right? I presumed that I probably loved myself too much, was too selfish, too lazy, too indulgent. And the practice of self love just felt like another excuse to go get a massage or my nails painted. I had no idea what self love was, and therefore didn't practice it and didn't experience any of the power or benefits of it. What happened for me was I was looking for other people to fill that gap, right? I love you and you love me, and I'll feel fulfilled by the love that you give me. Well, I wasn't feeling fulfilled. So I wasn't getting the love I was looking for. I wasn't even quite sure what that would look like and feel like, of course, because I didn't have that internal dialogue and dynamic going on inside me, but I didn't know that. So I end up heartbroken, just really disappointed with my husband, employers, situations, leadership in my community. And I thought, "Oh, where am I going to find this love?" And I'd even turned to God and looked for Him to fill this gap. In that, I still felt empty. I still felt this, at least, dissonance between what I knew could be true about His love for me and my experience of it. So it was time to look within. It was time to look at the relationship I had with myself, whatever that meant, and however I could learn how to improve on that. I mean, what kind of relationship did I have with myself, and how did that matter? Well, I started to care about my heart and soul, and when I went inward, I found quite a mess. Apparently, self-love did not come with the territory. I had plenty of harshness, criticism, self-rejection. This was all going on inside, and my emotions were all over the place because I was aware now. These were emotions that were already present, but were not fully expressed, not resolved, not dealt with, because I didn't care enough about my heart and soul to do so. The practices of self-love required some very serious things for me. One was to have a self. This meant no more hiding behind being good, being right, conforming to culture, doing what other people expected of me. This meant I had to be really real about what I was feeling, thinking, my preferences, my interests. This was terribly uncomfortable. The authenticity that it required was nerve-wracking. I thought, this is me. This is why I hate me. Look at me. I'm miserable. I'm complaining. I'm sad. I'm discontent. Like, what am I going to do with this mess? What about love it? Love the mess. That was my first challenge, to have a self and then to love that self. How was I going to love this mess? Well, I found that love required me to be patient, kind, forgiving, believe the best. None of the things that I was necessarily reacting to my mess with. When I began to actually cultivate a deep care and passion for myself, this means I was willing to invest time, energy, and resources into the practice of self-love, into knowing and experiencing my heart and soul. This again was risky. I felt selfish. I felt like I was missing out on building something external or something that other people could see and acknowledge that I was really up to something. No, I was going inward. I was going slow, and I was re-navigating my relationship with myself. So I had to look at what real love was. Not placate, not pretend, not even manipulate. Sometimes we can try to say, I love you, or I'm going to give you this, but you'll perform later, or I'll give you this if you give that. There's a lot of conditions that we create on the way that we relate to ourselves. And it was time for me to release those, to allow me to know myself as I really was and deeply care about the authentic Katie. That practice was challenging in itself. But then the third part of this component, the first was to have a self. The second was to really navigate what loving myself really looked like and would require of me. And third was to own the process, to know that I had to take responsibility for the vulnerabilities, for the willingness to soften again. The whole experience was something that I was going to have to own for myself. No more looking to other people or even requiring God to give me a sense of love. If I didn't love myself, I was often hardening and blocking love. God or anyone else, they weren't going to get into the places that I was no longer willing to be vulnerable. That process required ownership and responsibility. Now, the power of self-love was that I began to practice it regularly, notice it continually, adjust to and align to love, and I really began to blossom. My feelings actually weren't enemies. They were just signals to help me get back in alignment. My relationships actually were offering me more love than I realized. I just wasn't really that interested in being vulnerable to them at that point because I was shaky in my vulnerability. I had never really been vulnerable in a way where I had experienced consistent love, like the love I was now cultivating and developing for myself. And I do believe God's in the midst of that process, but He requires us to be a part of that process. This is where my roots, my very being, were getting deep in love. It wasn't just theory anymore, it was practice of heart and soul. Art of the Heart is about that very journey for each and every one of you, and that's why I designed the various type of sessions that I have. It's building a foundation of love as well as offering emotional healing processes, relational renavigation, so that your heart and soul can really start showing up for you in ways that matter to you, the unique way that you were designed. Then I have free resources and email that I like to offer you so that your heart can stay very consistent on the journey of self-love and the practice of wholeness. Jump in, join the journey, and let your heart know how much you're willing to learn how to deeply care, deeply invest, and deeply own the process.